Hello. Thank you for listening. This is the near-death experience of Francie, and Francie's experience occurred in August of 1972 and was documented on September 22nd of 2017, open quote. I did not realize it was a near-death experience until I was in my 40s and heard someone talking about it on TV. Then it dawned on me that what I had experienced was quite similar. My father was present when I had the experience, and I told him what I saw and felt. But he did not understand what had happened, and we didn't dwell on it. I made sure that I never forgot it, and that it never affected the way I looked at life. I remember saying aloud the next day to myself, I will not let this change what I believe. Curiously, my beliefs at the time of the experience were analytically based and not particularly well formed. I understood this was a unique experience, and I did not share it with anyone else, assuming that none of my peers would have experienced it. I told no one else until my grandfather was dying when I told him what I saw and what to expect. I wanted to help him die peacefully. I was in the hospital post-surgery late at night when my dad noticed that I had stopped breathing. He ran for the nurses. At some point, they began CPR. I was aware of none of that. There were two acts to the play. I felt a warm, all-consuming, and nurturing light. It was the most positive feeling I have ever felt, that all was as it should be, and that I should make every effort to reach that light. It was the most perfect feeling, and I was going for that light as hard as I could. I felt myself smiling. The next thing that happened was that I was aware of my dad's presence. Now, my eyes were not open, and at the time I suspected that I was still considered unconscious, but I was acutely aware that my dad was near me. I did not see him, but I felt him. I could literally feel his anxiety and fear. I immediately thought that when I did see him, I needed to say something that would reassure him that I was going to be okay. And I knew I would know what to say. So as soon as I opened my eyes, I saw my dad standing next to my bed looking right at me. I said to him, "Wow, what a trip." And those words were chosen before I opened my eyes. I somehow knew what I was going to say. I just began talking to my dad to reassure him. I don't remember this, but he told me a few weeks later that I stayed up all that night talking and would not go back to sleep. End quote. I liked how she talked about the light so far, and it looks like there's some questions here. But when she said that I should make every effort to reach that light, it was the most perfect feeling. And then she said, I felt myself smiling. That's pretty cool. Questions? At the time of the experience, was there an associated life-threatening event? Answer, yes, accident. Clinical death, car accident that day, post-surgery for internal bleeding and splenectomy. Also, multiple pelvic fractures and pneumothorax, given morphine for pain. I had an adverse reaction that was likely a dosage issue and less likely an allergic response. Respiratory arrest. Head nurse later said they thought I was gone even after CPR initiated. How would you consider the content of your experience? Answer, entirely pleasant. Question, your highest level of consciousness? Answer, not a clear question. Can't tell what you are really getting at. My consciousness was totally different than during normal consciousness. I was consciously more and acutely aware of another person's feelings. I felt what my dad felt and had no other feelings except the responsibility for addressing those feelings. I was completely absent from the physical environment. I had no physical presence. Question: did time seem to speed up or slow down? Answer: this experience really has two phases, the bright light phase and the bodiless existence phase, almost like an editor had cut and spliced the tape. There was nothing to reflect time. Time did not exist. Question: comparing your vision. Answer: it depends on what you are defining as senses. In the classical definition of the five senses, I had no senses. It was feeling that was incredibly increased. The light was bright, welcoming, and encompassing. My awareness and connectivity to my dad's feelings was extremely acute. Question: did you pass into or through a tunnel? Answer: yes. It was not a literal tunnel. It was as if there was no peripheral vision and no need for it. The glow of the light provided a positive magnetic pull, and nothing else mattered. Question: did you see an unearthly light? Answer: yes. Magnetic like attraction, bright and encompassing. Getting to it was the clearest purpose I have ever had in my life. Question: what emotions did you feel during the experience? Answer: I felt my dad's anxiety as if it was my own, but I was not panicked or afraid at all. I was quite calm and assumed the role of reassurance. I felt strangely in control. The joy was when I saw the light. Question: did your experience include features consistent with your earthly belief? Answer: both consistent and inconsistent. I do not necessarily put this in a religious context. I still consider that the light might be a neurological process, not a mystical one. Regardless, it is real. I believe in a higher power, but without many of the trappings of organized religion. Question: do you believe in the existence of God after your experience? Answer: I am uncertain if God exists. Question: during your experience, did you gain special knowledge or information about your purpose? Answer: yes. In the second phase of the experience, just before consciousness, as best I could tell, I knew I had experienced something unearthly. Question: do you believe in an afterlife after your experience? Answer: I am uncertain if an afterlife exists. No. Question: did you gain information about how to live our lives? Answer: yes. I learned that the actual process of dying is a very positive experience near the final moments. I used that information to help my grandfather die peacefully. He found it quite reassuring. It also allowed me to sit quietly and calmly alone with my father as he died at home. I reminded him of my experience, since he witnessed it, a few days before he died, and I went into greater detail about what he would see and feel in the last moments of his life. And as he was literally dying and taking his last few breaths, I told him that everything was okay and to go for the light. His breathing immediately became more effortless, and he took his last breath. I know he heard me because I know there is a level of earthly awareness, actual death. I still fear death because I like it here, but I know what the literal process is at the end of earthly existence, and it is good. I have a math/science, extremely analytical brain. I do not consider this a religious experience, but a scientific one. Question: what life changes occurred in your life after your experience? Answer: no changes in my life. The structure of the question above could create misleading responses. It depends on how you define God and how you define afterlife, and I am trying to describe an 18-year-old's beliefs and then a 64-year-old's beliefs. So much has happened in those years that affect a person's perspective and approach that I don't think you can conclude much here. I was determined at 18 to view this as a unique experience that might one day be useful, but that I would not allow it to alter my beliefs or approach to life. I knew it was important, even at that age, to not allow one experience to have a dramatic effect on my life. In time, I began to appreciate how fortunate I was to have the experience and to have the information about death that it provided me. Question: how accurately do you remember the experience in comparison with other life events that occurred around the same time as the experience? Answer: I remember it more accurately. I remember almost nothing of the physical events which came hours before or hours after the experience. I do remember an intellectual conversation I had with myself the next day. I remember the experience itself as if it happened yesterday, because I told myself afterwards to memorize the details so that I could share it with the right person at the right time. And remember, I had no idea what I had experienced. I had never heard of near-death experiences in 1972. For days afterwards, I tried to recapture that exact feeling I had when I experienced the light, to no avail. Question: do you have any psychic, non-ordinary, or other special gifts after your experience that you did not have before the experience? Answer: no. Question: are there one or several parts of your experience that are especially meaningful to you? Answer: none that I have not already shared. I shared with no one until I heard of near-death experiences much later. I remember hearing of it and being stunned by the recognition that others had experienced similar things. But I have shared it with only family members until today. Question: have you ever shared this experience with others? Answer: yes. Except for my grandfather, it was decades before I shared it with anyone else. Immediately after the experience, I just described a wild trip to my dad. I did not think anyone would believe me or that they just wouldn't get it. Question: what do you believe about the reality of your, what did you believe about the reality of your experience shortly after it happened? Answer: experience was definitely real. This question is a bit illogical. It happened. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a morphine haze. To call the light a light is really a misrepresentation. There is lightness pulling you toward it, but the lightness is part of the feeling of enormously positive rightness of where you are and what you are doing in that moment. At no point did I, or have I, ever doubted the experience, which was why I felt such wonder when I heard someone else describe their experience for the first time. Question: what do you believe about the reality of your experience now? Answer: experience was definitely real. It is part of who I am now, a characteristic that is a little quirky and a little different than most, but I am particularly grateful for it and for being able to use to help two wonderful people go through the last stages of dying. End question. End quote. Wow, that was very interesting. The thoughts of Francie and her beliefs and interpretations. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Francie, for sharing that, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.